Good afternoon. I'm going to read 5 poems, 2 by Kenneth Rexroth and 3 by myself. I'm going to begin with a poem that actually mentions Mount Tamalpais by Rexroth called On What Planet? Uniformly, over the whole countryside, the warm air flows imperceptibly seaward. The autumn haze drifts in deep bands over the pale water. White egrets stand in the blue marshes. Tamalpais, Diablo, St. Helena float in the air, climbing on the cliffs of Hunter's Hill. We look out over 50 miles of sinuous interpenetrations of mountain and sea. Leading up the twisted chimneys, just as my eyes rise to the level of a small cave, 2 white owls fly out, silent, close to my face. They hover, confused in the sunlight, and disappear into the recesses of the cliff. All day, I have been watching a new climber, a young girl with ash blonde hair and gentle, confident eyes. She climbs slowly, precisely, with unwasted grace, while I am coiling the ropes, watching the spectacular sunset. She turns to me and says quietly, "It must be very beautiful, the sunset, on Saturn, with the rings and all the moons." And this is an elegy that Rexroth wrote for his first wife, who was a painter who was an epileptic and died actually in a seizure at a fairly young age. Andre Rexroth died October 1940. Now, once more, gray mottled buckeye branches explode their emerald stars, and alders smolder in a rosy smoke of innumerable buds. I know that spring again is splendid. As ever, the hidden thrush, as sweetly tongued, the sun is vital. But there are forest trails we walked together, these paths 10 years together. We thought the years would last forever. They are all gone now, the days we thought would not come for us here. And I love the endings of those poems, and especially, you never would expect the first poem to end. It must be very beautiful, the sunset on Saturn, with the rings and all the moons. I'd urge you to get this wonderful collection of Rexroth's poems and writings on the Sierras and on the mountains, including Tamalpais, that Kim Stanley Robinson edited. It's for sale there. The first poem of my own that I'm going to read is called California Hills in August. Shouldn't need any explanation to this crowd. I can imagine someone who found these fields unbearable, who climbed the hillside in the heat, cursing the dust, cracking the brittle weeds underfoot, wishing a few more trees for shade. An Easterner especially, who would scorn the meagerness of summer, the dry, twisted shapes of black elm, scrub oak, and chaparral, a landscape August had already drained of green. One who would hurry over the clinging thistle, foxtail, golden poppy, knowing everything was just a weed, unable to conceive that these sparse brown bushes were alive, and hate the bright stillness of the noon, without wind, without motion, the only other living thing, a hawk hungry for prey, suspended in the blinding sunlit blue. And yet, how gentle it seems to someone raised in a landscape short of rain. The skyline of a hill, broken by no more trees than one can count. The grass, the empty sky, the wish for water. I do a lot of work with composers, and trying to write something that works as a poem on the page and a song set to music. And these are some lyrics that I wrote for the jazz pianist Helen Sung. It's a very LA poem. It's about the beautiful people and the power that beauty gives them and what happens to that power. Pity the beautiful. Pity the beautiful, the dolls and the dishes, the babes with big daddies, granting their wishes. Pity the pretty boys, the hunks and Apollos, the golden lads whom success always follows, the hotties, the knockouts, the 10s out of 10, the drop-dead gorgeous, the great leading men. Pity the faded, the bloated, the blousy, the paunchy Adonis whose luck's turned lousy. Pity the gods, no longer divine. Pity the night, the stars lose their shine. And I'm going to end with a short poem, and it needs a bit of explanation. My wife and I lost our first son. He died at 4 months of sudden infant death syndrome. And I'm not going to talk about the grief about that, but there's an odd thing that happens if you lose a child. Ever thereafter, when you see a kid who would be about the same age as your child, you go, that's what my son would look like. That's what my boy would be doing. And so your kid has a kind of phantom childhood. And this is a poem I wrote on what would have been my son's 21st birthday. So it's called Majority. Now you'd be 3, I said to myself, seeing a child born the same summer as you. Now you'd be 5 or 7 or 10. I watched you grow in foreign bodies, leaping into a pool, all laughter, or frowning over a keyboard, but mostly just standing, taller each time. How splendid your most mundane actions seemed in these joyful proxies. I often held back tears. Now you are 21. Finally, it makes sense that you have moved away into your own afterlife. Thank you very much. Thank you.